We, as Catholics, are failing our youth. So this is going to be a little bit of a different YouTube video compared to what you are used to. Usually I talk about biblical archaeology, take you to some holy sites, or I might, some of my more popular videos, talk about theology. Has some really controversial titles. I should probably do that with this one. Hopefully, I'm planning on making some really combining that and making some really good videos in the future that I have planned. I've just been busy with studies, too busy with studies to do them. But today, I want to talk something that's close to my heart that I think needs to be discussed, and that is how we as Catholics suck at passing on the faith to our children. And yes, this includes tradition Catholics faithful to tradition, unfortunately. So, let's go back in time to many years. So I'll tell you the stories that I experienced. So let's go back in time. Back to around the year 2006. I was a 16-year-old catechumen in the Catholic Church. I decided I would be a Catholic months prior to, and I was nowhere near as educated about the Catholic faith as I am now. There's a lot of things I said that or thought that were technically materially heretical, but I was still learning. I was a new catechumen. And I was aware of this. So anyway, I was speaking with my high school counselor who also happened to go to my church, and she randomly mentioned to me that they needed catechism to teach the catechist to teach the kids, Sunday school teachers. And she asked me if I wanted to do so. My initial response was no. Don't get me wrong, I love children. I love teaching them. I love their energy. I find it really enjoyable. And she said, and but I at the time felt that I was ignorant about the Catholic Church. I'm a catechumen. I've been Catholic. I decided to become Catholic months ago, and there's just so much I did not know. So my so my this initial decision was this is a bad idea. This is wrong. Then I was told two things that made me change my mind. One, there's some kids who are being put out of the classroom uh, for causing problems, and I was asked if I could deal them specially. And two, they asked if my mother could catechize. Now, my mother is not a Catholic. They knew that. So when I realized they were just going to hire anyone, even people who did not believe in the Catholic faith, to teach the Catholic faith to children, I immediately said, look, I'll take the job. I knew I had problems, but I knew I wouldn't intentionally lie about the Catholic faith to children. Or now, when I first started teaching catechism, I had two kids. I won't use their full names. Alex and Nick. They were handfuls. They were like 6 years old at the time. They would stand on desks, cause huge disturbances, and everything. So my attitude was, well, okay, I got these kids for like an hour a week. They're full of energy. I need to teach them something. So I said I would start making class fun for the kids. Now, by making class fun, I do not mean uneducational. And this is something I think education has a problem with today, be it in high school level, be it university level. It is too dry. That is simply not how people learn. And we need to get people to remember things. That is the whole point of teaching. I could and probably should make a whole video about how academia, I think, needs to change. I don't mean constant entertainment, but part of educating people is being engaging. That is simply part of the job. And especially with cases like kids who you maybe get an hour with them a week, assuming the kids show up. Often that doesn't happen in the Catholic Church. So I said, okay, I'm going to prioritize this. I was learning. I thought, okay, I'll teach them the way I was taught. I'll teach them some basic Bible stories. Teach them about teach them about the Tabernacle of Moses. We would do the Battle of Jericho. Favorite childhood Bible story game I had from when I was 6 or 7 years old. Really nothing too crazy. Then they tried to say we're going to put these kids back in the mainstream classes. The emphasis very much I found was not teaching the kids the Catholic faith. It was making the kids sit down for a solid hour while the teacher droned on and on. And I don't mean everyone who taught catechism was bad, but I mean that was the goal of the entire program. So I opposed mainstreaming the kids, but they insisted on bringing it in, and I sparred quite a bit with the other teacher. I said, "Look, these kids aren't learning anything." So here's what they would do: they would sit down the kids in a circle or at a table, or at a table looking around. They had to sit still. Keep in mind, these are like 6-year-olds who had already been in church for an hour. And they would open up this little pamphlet, and they had to read point by point the epistle of the day. I would not start. I love liturgical years, but I would definitely not start with the little children, 6 years old, on the epistle, on the second epistle of Blessed Paul the Apostle to the Corinthians in Sunday school. And they'd read out the gospel passages, and they would often do it in such a mind-numbing way that even I couldn't squeeze any theology out of it. There was no theological deeper meaning, no teaching of what the Catholic faith teaches on the Blessed Sacrament. In fact, I was even told in some cases to not teach the kids the Catholic faith. There are more on that later. But overall, the method was just horrible. It got so bad at one point, I told the teacher, another Sunday school teacher, "Look, I'm here to teach the kids for an hour. I'm here to teach the kids Sunday school and the Catholic faith. If that is a problem, okay, that is a problem, and you just want babysitting for an hour after so the parents can go get coffee by themselves, I'd charge $10 a kid." It was essentially free, glorified babysitting. And they did not want it to be anything more than that. There were even parents who opposed it. There were a lot of parents who liked me, actually, because I made things engaging for the children. I would negotiate sometime every other Sunday with the teachers. And I would tell the kids about St. Gregory the Great, who was a famous sainted pope, in case you don't know his story. He had to be dragged to his episcopal consecration as bishop because he didn't want the job of being pope. So we always get the troublemakers in class, since they were running around anyway. Well, it's okay if they run around. It's just a matter if you do it in a way that's engaging. They would drag me across the floor as I was screaming, no, I don't want to be pope. And we did a whole bunch of things like that whenever I got in charge. The head of the program, Sunday school program, wanted the kids to sit down in a circle. And it's, you know how people say, "Oh, I'm glad we're not doing remedial Baltimore catechism anymore." Like, no, they weren't even doing that. It was literally just sitting in a circle, mindlessly reading the epistle it was too deep for kids to understand. It was not well written or explained. The Bible stories that they picked, they managed to dumb it down so that it was not engaging or interesting to children. And it was just a waste of time. So some of you who may be more old-fashioned might ask, okay, why is it important that it's interesting to children? So they remember it. So they internalize it. Otherwise, we're completely wasting our time. Wasting the kids' time and our time. It would be better to just let the kids go play hockey or not even take them to church at all. And just tell them, "Oh, you're Catholic, say some prayers." And then later on, so you're not completely turning them off to the faith. In this way. Now, I wish this was the only problem. There were cases where I was actively taught and told to not teach the kids the Catholic faith and even teach kids things that are explicitly heretical. For example, there was one Sunday school program that was talking about saints. They were including, among the saints, Martin Luther King Jr., Mahatma Gandhi as saints. And it was just about how we're all together, we all pray together. And they had prayer of invocations, and they had us, as part of the lesson, invoke the children as saints, because they are part of the mystical body of Christ as well. Now, don't get me wrong. I fully support what Martin Luther King Jr. did in the Civil Rights Movement. Mahatma Gandhi was a great famous pacifist, absolutely worthy of admiration and respect. Same with Martin Luther King Jr. They're not, however, saints, and they're not to be venerated in the Catholic Church. So rather having a nice, around All Saints Day, a nice maybe Halloween party where you tell the kids about saints, maybe bringing some relics, and explain all these Bible stories about Joshua bowing for the angel at Jericho, or the saints who are in heaven. Maybe have someone dress up and tell them that story, and explain what these principles are from the Bible. They basically, they had something that's completely heretical. It was better to not teach the kids at all, honestly. It got worse. I remember there was another case where they were preparing the kids for First Communion. They explicitly told us, and the program called for us, not to tell the kids that it was that Jesus is present in the Blessed Sacrament. They told us not to teach the kids this. They told us to tell them that it's just special bread. In fact, there was even one catechist where they sat down, and one of the kids asked the teacher, "Is it literally the body of Christ, or is it just bread?" The teacher told them, "Oh, it's just bread." Yeah, this is how they're preparing kids. Now, I, of course, complain about this and say, look, the kids are not responding to the program. They are not, some things are explicitly heretical, and it's boring. I remember complaining about this to the head of the program. The response of this was for me to be bullied. Call aside every other Sunday and lectured for a solid hour on how I was worthless, should become a hermit, and never deal with anyone ever again, because everyone hated me and I was worthless. I was 16 years old at the time, remember. New convert. Trying to put my best forward for the kids. And I put up with for a year till I basically had a mental breakdown. That was my experience in Nova Soto Sunday School, and I would not teach in a Nova Soto Sunday School again. And it's not even because of the children. It's because of that toxic environment. Well, I'm willing to teach the kids the faith and teaching heresy. Traditional Catholics are better. Now, in most areas, a lot of traditional Catholics do not have a formal catechism program. In some places, I'm sure they do. But out in mission territory, like where I live, parents, the priest maybe might give a short talk that's aimed at adults, but there's nothing for the kids. It's simply because it's impractical. So a lot of parents have teachings at home. The kids, I will say this, at least as far as content, they are actually being told things. Like they're not as ignorant. They know the stories of the lives of the saints. They know why Mass is important, etc. They know Jesus' presence in the Blessed Sacrament. That being said, I think things could be better. A lot of the kids do not know basic Bible stories, for example, which, if you're an apologist trying to defend the Catholic faith to a Protestant, you need to know basic Bible stories. There's so much in Bible stories that establish precedent for bad things happening to good people. So much that are precedents for explaining why you believe Jesus Christ is God. So many things about why bad things happen to good people, etc. All these things are in the Bible. And so, yes, in this day and age, the Bible is useful and morally necessary. I believe there's even a Lateran Council that said when dealing with when you're studying pagan philosophy, and let's be honest, we de facto live in a society that's drenched in pagan philosophy. The way they would challenge this is by insisting on students studying Scripture, and that would counterbalance it, keep them on an even keel. This is not being done. I know kids who didn't know who Samson was, for example. Now, this is not to blast parents too much. These parents are, based on what they knew, are doing the best that they know how. They're doing their absolute best from what they have been raised with, and completely on their own. So this is not an attack on traditional Catholic parents who are not 100% perfect and everything 100% of the time. That being said, let's be honest. A lot of kids leave the Catholic Church. I think maybe of all the kids I taught in Sunday school, I think maybe maybe 3, 4 are active, of like 10 or 20. That is not a good retention rate. And yes, some of it has to do with the fact that they're simply not taught or given a good reason to go to church, and the bad behavior of some people gave them good reason to leave. They were not given good reasons to any serious answers to questions of things like why do good things bad things happen to good people. And honestly, I will start telling you things that I think need to change. And by the way, all this applies to both traditional Catholics and Novus Ordo Catholics. So for starters, things that need to change, we need educated Sunday school teachers and catechists. Whether that means you're a Novus Ordo Catholic and head of a Sunday school program, whether that means you are a lone parent at home in the woods and you have to teach the kids yourself, whoever is teaching the kids needs to know the faith themselves inside out. Yes, that does mean reading more than that means reading it means you need to read the Baltimore Catechism St. Pius X. It also means you need to go beyond it and become an apologist. That is simply the way things are today. Like there's so many temptations to fall away to Protestantism and now atheism, which is a fast-growing religion in North America. In the future, there needs to be a lot more emphasis on answering the questions. Like when I was younger, the main concern was, and that is my main focus as well. Admittedly, that's my expertise, something I will need to learn to do better in the future. I know how to answer the questions the kids might have as relate to Protestantism, like why do we venerate saints? Is Jesus present by sacrament biblically? I can answer that. The future is going to be answering questions about atheism, and well, Father says is not going to cut it. However pious that may sound, at the end of the day, the kid needs to do the believing themselves. And if that is the best answer you got, what you've told them is that you have no clue and you don't really wish to know. And you've given them a very good reason to just leave the faith, especially when you're Tricath and the priest comes in like, who knows, maybe once a month if you're lucky. You need to do this. You need to study the Catholic faith yourself. So my advice is, if you are studying the catechism, want to teach the kids the faith, whether you're a catechist, Sunday school teacher, a parent home alone, minimum, I'd say read the Bible. You need to know all your basic Bible stories. You need to know John Stiles' Catholic Apologetics website, Catholic Answers. They're both Novus Ordo-y, but they do have good apologetic material. You should read Catholic apologetic material as well, and apologetics against atheism. And that means you need to read all of it. It means Lee Strobel, Protestant, but has great apologetics, but he's a must-go for getting started. There's also the works of Dr. Anthony Flew, which I have yet to read, but I've heard of them, who was a former leader of the New Atheism movement, but converted to not Christianity but theism based on the evidence of science alone. In the future, parents will have to read these things. You must read these things. Your chief job as parents, as chief educators of their children, I do not care your state in life, the temptations your kids will have to face will be philosophical and atheistic. You need to know. You need to know how to answer those questions, and this goes for anyone who's going to teach catechism. If you're in charge of a catechism program, these people need to know. I know this might even get some Trackhouse upset with me, who think the Baltimore Catechism is sufficient for children. It is necessary, but it is not sufficient. It is necessary for knowing the what, but it is not sufficient for knowing the why. And in this day and age, it is not enough to simply know the faith. We are not living in a Catholic society. Our kids are on the front line of apologetics wars, and we're giving them water guns to fight with. That is the fact of the matter. Fundamentals of Catholic Dogma by Dr. Ludwig Ott is also, if you can afford it and order it online, it's actually simpler to read than the Catechism of the Catholic Church, actually. It explains, where everything is in the Bible, and where it explains what is dogmatically defined, and where it all is. You need to read the original papal encyclicals, pre and post Vatican II, on the Vatican website. And yes, all this applies to everyone who is in charge of educating children, be they parents, catechists, Sunday school teachers, priests, etc. going forward. It is necessary for you to know. We cannot talk about the best way to teach children if you do not know what you're teaching them yourselves. Read a Douay-Rheims Bible cover to cover. That is our state in life in this day and age. That is what one thing needs to change. Number 2, I was actually able to hide the fact that I was trad Cath for years and had sympathies for a while in the Nova Scotia because I am very much an advocate of progressive methods of educating children. I don't care if they're sitting down. I don't care if they're running around. All that matters at the end of the day is, did the kids learn something? And honestly, we need to be open-minded to everything. Maybe in some cases, yeah, the traditional method of sitting down, kids folded, are going to work. Sometimes they should run around or play games like I did. That is my personal suggestion of a method, and I would push for that, especially if you only have the kids for an hour a week. I remember we had an hour-long class once a week, and 20 minutes of it was spent by the head program. I think even the entirety of it in some cases, each week, making 1 or 2 kids who didn't want to sit down sit in their seat after they sat in a church for an hour, and they were all antsy. And look, maybe the kids should learn to do that, but they have public schools to do that. They have private schools to do that. Especially if you have the kids once a week, and in some cases you kind of get the impression that they are not being taught by their much about the Catholic faith at home. And I remember I didn't teach the kids the Our Father in catechism. You know why? Because I just assumed they were praying it all the time at home. I later on found out that they knew what the Our Father was at First Communion, and they should be sent back to Sunday school. No, they should be taught that at home. So if that is your situation, making the kids sit down for an hour once a week is not what your priority should be. Your priority needs to be to teach them the Catholic faith and Catholic morals. And if that means you integrate the bad kids into the lesson plan so that they're being entertaining, teaching the kids in an entertaining way about the Catholic faith, then do that. But you only got them for a short time in catechism. In some situations, it may be different. But I think we need some influencers or some YouTubers who are making fun lessons for kids to watch on YouTube about the catechism, the Catholic faith from a traditional Catholic standpoint. Who knows, maybe someday I'll start doing that myself on this channel or another one. But that needs to happen. The only thing that really matters in this scenario is if the kids are learning their stuff. That's it, nothing else. They learn it, they love it. If it works, it works. And we should not be clinging to, and no one, whether it be people like me who favor progressive method or people who favor more old school method, if it is not working, it is not working. There's canon law about how you hold your hands at Mass. I'm not aware of any code of canon law about how children should sit at catechism. You do what works. You teach them the faith. Baltimore Catechism also should be. This might surprise some people, considering maybe not surprising considering I'm a traditional Catholic, but not surprising considering very surprising considering I favor progressive methods. I like the Baltimore Catechism. As far as what needs to be taught, it is a great. I don't think it should be the rote memorization. Maybe in some cases that works, but like I said, I think it's a great starting point for the Catholic faith. I think it's an amazing starting point and a great skeleton for a broader lesson plan. So I like the Baltimore Catechism, but again, it's something you should build your lesson plan off of. And that story is the lives of the saints, and your own knowledge, of Scripture. And you should have that knowledge. If you don't have that knowledge, you should not be teaching catechism, and should spend time focusing on that. So what's the current state of catechism today? Disaster. The fact of the matter is we are not prepared, and a lot of people we have a lot of people who are just ignorant about the Catholic faith. I regret to say even some Tradcasts are probably in this boat as well, who do not know what they should know, and actively in many cases are not. I know of some cases, one catechist, when I was young, another 16-year-old girl, told them she was going to teach the kids things contrary to Catholic faith, and she doesn't care what anyone said. She was going to do it. I knew catechists who, and by the way, if they're not dedicated, you shouldn't be catechists. I remember one class, I had to be called in to teach another class because the person who was supposed to be a Sunday school teacher decided they just wanted to do it and didn't show up because they're like a 16-year-old boy and didn't care. And this happened on more than one occasion. Or you had teachers who did not show up. I had no clue if the other teacher was going to show up, so no clue what if I should prepare a lesson plan or not. And it was chaos. And I'm going to be honest with you, you're teaching. I'm going to be honest with you. If you're teaching catechism in the Novus Ordo program, my advice: fight for it. But you'll probably will have to leave your position. Even if you want, that is if you're going to fight for the kids for bare bones orthodoxy in any sense, even in the post Vatican II sense, and bare bones make it so the kids enjoy it and are listening to it, are enthusiastic about the faith. If you're going to fight for that at all, you're going to have to leave the program at some point. Be prepared for it. No one to bow out, and it is going to be utterly heartbreaking, especially if you care about the kids like I did and do. I'm actually still in touch with at least one of the kids who I used to teach. He unfortunately no longer practices the faith. Please say a prayer for him. But yeah, it is a heart-rending experience. My honest, and I wish I had better news for you. If you have this energy or enthusiasm about teaching the kids, I would suggest be one of those catechists who's studying the Catholic faith. Study it well, and make a YouTube channel. Make a puppet show to tell the kids about the Catholic faith. And do that from a traditional standpoint, using the Baltimore Catechism. Do all that. It is needed. But the fact is, the state of modern catechism, do not put your kids in a modern Novus Ordo Sunday school. I would not, even if I were to return to a Novus Ordo Catholic today, I would not do so because of my own experiences, and I would not be open telling my kids the Catholic faith. And if you're a parent, I would fight hard for your children. We have too many parents sending the kids to Sunday school being upset when they get taught the Catholic faith, which is something I also experienced. Anyway, God bless. Have a great day. If you have a chance in your life, please check out SSPX Church. Go to traditional Latin Mass. And my gosh, please, if you have children or are in charge of children, teach them the faith. Don't be a Karen. Do what's necessary so that they do learn. You got better things to do being the sit-down police, especially when we only have the kids for an hour a day. Make it enjoyable and actually teach them the faith. Teach them something. God bless.